Hey there, friends of the past. Before we set sail on tonight's voyage through time, do me a favor. If you enjoy these gentle history journeys, please give this video a like and subscribe so I know to keep telling these sleepy stories. And I'd love to know, what city are you in right now and what time is it? I want to picture exactly where you are as we wander through colonial streets together. Now, find your coziest spot, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for a soft, soothing hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. The chill of an early autumn night settles over Salem's narrow streets as Robert Whitmore slips along the cobblestones, lantern held low so its amber glow barely kisses the walls of shuttered homes. 3 sharp rings from the town's iron bell cut through the hush, the curfew signal. By colonial law, any soul outdoors beyond the 3rd toll without proper excuse invites a stiff fine or worse, a night in the stocks. Robert's heart stirs with both dread and curiosity. He imagines the town crier, old Samuel Grayson, stationed atop the meeting house balcony each evening to enforce order, wool coat dusted with salt from the bay, tricorn hat tilted just so against the wind, a lantern in one hand and bell cord in the other. Legends say Samuel once chased down a prankster hurling rotten apples at midnight, reciting the curfew by candlelight until the boy begged mercy. Few towns had such strict schedules, but for Salem, peace after dark was worth every penny in fines. Women washed linen by sunset to avoid noisy water troughs. Tradesmen hurried home from the alehouse lest they face public shaming. Even the blacksmith's hammer fell silent. The rhythmic clank paused until dawn. In a world without clocks in every home, the bell was both timekeeper and guardian, its toll as reliable as the tide. As Robert edges past the final lantern-lit window, he recalls his grandmother's warning, "Never test the bell's authority, lad." It listens. With each echo bouncing between timber and slate, the laws of colonial Massachusetts wrap around him like a heavy blanket, strict, unyielding, yet oddly comforting in their promise of quiet nights to come. As the bell's final echo fades, Martha Winthrop stirs bread dough by hearthlight, the warmth chasing the evening chill from her fingers. She counts the tolls in her head, 1, 2, 3, before she kneads with extra vigor, mindful that the law forbidding after-hours baking is as strict as the curfew itself. Town warrants decreed that ovens must be banked by the 3rd ring. Any hot coals rekindled beyond curfew earned owners a warning, and a second offence could bring a crisp 12 pence fine. Martha's husband, Jasper, leans in the doorway, lantern dimmed low, watching her secret kneading with an amused grin. He recalls how Widow Fletcher's oven glowed too late one night, drawing Samuel Grayson himself to extinguish her coals, and she never lived to bake again without keeping one eye on the clock. In the soft orange glow of the hearth, Martha imagines the yeast rising in time with her heartbeat. Outside, the wind rustles the maple leaves, as if to remind every household that colonial Massachusetts valued quiet above all. Children hush their whispered games. Dogs curl up in corners. For some, the baking ban felt like a gentle guardian, ensuring all slept under the same peaceful veil. For others, it was one more rule to sneak around, reckless youth giggling as they coaxed flaming embers back to life beneath a moonlit sky. Tonight, Martha vows she'll finish her loaves well before the dusk bell, her cinnamon-spiced rolls ready for dawn's first light. Across town, Isaac Fletcher cradles his fiddle beneath an elm tree, fingertips dancing over strings as he coaxes a lilting tune, a nocturne meant to soothe restless souls. But by colonial decree, playing music outdoors after the curfew tolls was banned to preserve the night's tranquility. Isaac's melody floats through the air, reaching Samuel Grayson's lantern beam as he rounds a corner on his nightly patrol. The law didn't distinguish between racket and reverie. Any strain of instrument ventured outdoors past curfew could lead to confiscation. Isaac lowers his instrument, cheeks flushed, as Samuel's lantern flickers closer. The old crier listens with a twitch of his brow, then raises a gloved hand. He could arrest Isaac for disturbing the peace, but instead offers a gentle reprimand. Calmly, save your tune for tomorrow's markets, lad. The fiddle's wood gleams in lantern light, the bow quivering in Isaac's grasp, as if afraid to break the hush entirely. With bowed head, Isaac nods, gathers his case, and slips back toward home, the night's hush restored. Music and moonlight mingled here nightly before laws tamed them. Now the village's silence is as deliberate as the blacksmith's rested hammer. Isaac's fingers ache for strings, but he takes solace knowing that even melodies must rest in colonial Massachusetts, ensuring dreamers aren't woken by impromptu serenades beneath starlit skies. Jonathan Mercer, a traveling preacher from Connecticut, arrives just as the curfew bell tolls its final note. He carries his small leather-bound Bible and battered satchel, seeking lodging before night fully claims the sky. But by law, all strangers had to register at the town hall by sundown or face a night in the guardhouse. The preacher's worn boots echo on cobblestones as he hurries toward the shuttered building. A lone constable, lantern tucked under one arm, emerges to question him. Jonathan bows respectfully, unrolls a parchment of credentials, and explains his mission: to deliver tomorrow's sermon on Providence. The constable's eyes soften at the reverend's gentle voice. He records Jonathan's name in a weathered ledger and offers a nod of goodwill, an unspoken allowance for itinerant clergy. Yet Jonathan senses the weight of scrutiny that all strangers bear under colonial rules. Every visitor, no matter how pious, entered with the knowledge that towns valued caution over hospitality after nightfall. As the preacher retreats to his assigned room above the tavern, lantern light dancing on wooden shutters, he contemplates these curious laws. They promised safety, but stung the edges of colonial charity. He fingers his Bible cover and wonders if tomorrow's congregation will forgive the vigilance that kept one wandering shepherd on his toes until dawn. In the final hush before midnight, the blacksmith's forge lies dark and cold. Matthew Clark, his soot-stained smock folded away, steps onto his workshop threshold. He breathes in the crisp air drifting off the harbour, distant gulls settling for the night. By decree, all smithies had to extinguish their fires by the curfew bell. No sparks, no clamour, no hammers ring to disturb slumbering families. Tonight, Matthew allows himself one prolonged exhale, his day's labour done, and listens to the town's silence as a sacred gift. He recalls how his first apprentice, eager to finish horseshoes, once stoked the embers too late, drawing Samuel's stern lecture about peace and rest. Matthew had stood before the dim forge, lantern balanced on anvil, chastised in front of neighbours. From that night on, he treated the bell's toll as more than law. He honoured it like a family lullaby. With a final glance at his cooled anvil and bellows, he pulls his woolen cap low and locks the workshop door. As he strolls home along lantern-lit lanes, he marvels at how a single bell shaped an entire village's rhythm, curbing noise, comforting sleepers, uniting strangers and townsfolk alike under one nightly command: rest. The stillness grows heavier, softer, as if the air itself had learned to tiptoe, and in that hush, colonial Massachusetts found its truest law of all: the quiet promise of tomorrow's dawn. As the moon crests over Ipswich's rooftops, Jonas Clark hefts his leather drum by its worn sling and treads toward the common. Once a soldier in King Philip's War, he now serves as the town's official night drummer, tasked with marking each passing hour, and by law must cease every beat with the third curfew toll. Town ordinance forbade any drum or horn beats past that toll, deeming them an unnecessary disturbance. The rhythmic of his stick against taut calfskin once reassured villagers that watchmen patrolled vigilantly. Beyond curfew, though, even this comforting beat risked fines and reprimands. Jonas positions himself beneath an ancient oak where his drum's hollow tones carry far. He begins with slow, measured strokes, 1 per hour, letting the cadence weave through alleyways and barns alike. Each beat is precise, a heartbeat calling the town to restful order. Behind shuttered windows, children press ears to glass, believing the drum's echo will lull them into dreams. Elsewhere, fishermen moor their skiffs in silence, wary of a stray drumbeat, inviting excise officers to question night's traders. Tonight, Jonas feels the weight of his duty more keenly. His drumstick must fall silent exactly when the curfew bell rings thrice. Too early, and he shirks his hour mark. Too late, and he risks the constable's censure. In the dim glow of his lantern, he watches the distant tower bell's shadow. 1,000 tiny lights flicker in windows as Ipswich holds its breath for that final toll. Then, drumstick poised, Jonas prepares for the hush that colonial law demanded above all. Inside Widow Beach's tavern, cozy, low-beamed, thick with the scent of spiced cider, lads and lassies lean forward, listening for the midnight drum. Under the new ordinance, any indoor drumming or spirited tapping on tavern beams after curfew was outlawed. Proprietors faced legal action if their patrons kept rhythm past the third bell. On this night, the alehouse's wooden floorboards tremble ever so slightly as young Thomas Harrington taps his mug in sync with Jonas's beats outside. A single rap would draw the constable's ire, inciting ledger entries and fines. The widow, austere but kind, broom in hand, moves slowly toward the hearth, her skirts whispering on the flagstones. With a gentle, chiding glance, she reminds Thomas that the law intends peace, not punishment. He nods, lowering the mug, but keeping time in his elbow's subtle sway. Around him, the handful of late-night drinkers hush their banter. Even the hearth's crackle seems disrespectful to the night's decree. In Colonial Massachusetts, taverns were both social hearths and potential nuisances. Laws balance conviviality with tranquility. At the tavern's single lantern, Widow Beach jots down the hour in a small book, noting that her doors will lock until dawn. She remembers the last time an overzealous drummer's beat drew constables in, and the entire establishment paid dearly. Tonight, though, she's prepared. Mugs wiped dry, fires banked low, and not a single wooden stool tapped to echo a forbidden drum. Under the hush, she lifts her gaze to the window, catching Jonas's silhouette in the distance, his drum silent now, peace restored. At the harbour's edge, fisherman Abigail Turner hauls in nets beneath a sky sparkling with stars. Normally, the gentle slap of nets on wooden docks harmonizes with the night drum, an unspoken lullaby for those at sea. Yet the law's reach extended to all percussion after curfew. No net thwacks, no barrel taps. Abigail's linen shift clings damply to her shoulders as she moves with practiced ease, mindful of each footfall on the slick planks. Each tide brings fresh catch and fresh temptation to count fish by sounding nets. She recalls last season's catch, when an apprentice's careless thump summoned a constable's lantern beam, ending their quiet ritual with scolding and a warning. Since then, Abigail teaches newcomers to inspect nets silently, using leather gloves to soften every motion. Tonight, with Jonas's drum hush still echoing in her ears, she lifts net after net in near silence, the harbour's lull restored. In the distance, Jonas's drumstick rests atop his drum. No more beats allowed, and as Abigail secures her catch, she thanks the curfew law for guarding families ashore from the clamour of the working night. Inside the stone-walled guardhouse, Constable Rebecca Hart reviews her nightly round. By ordinance, if she heard any post-curfew drumming, no matter how soft, the law allowed her to summon the night drummer and issue a citation. Tonight, her ears strain for the slightest echo. The rhythm of a man's slow breathing mingles with the distant sigh of whipped sails. At precisely the third bell toll, any drum must rest forevermore until dawn. She clutches her brass lantern, its light bobbing as she steps over the rough-hewn threshold. Moments ago, she heard a faint tap on a distant barn door. Could it have been an illicit tapping in time with the hour? She peers through iron-barred windows, recalling her own youthful mischief, drumming on a pew in the meeting-house loft, earning her a public apology and a lesson in respecting the night. Now, as guardian of tranquility, she sets her jaw against nostalgia and steps into the crisp air, lantern in hand, to investigate the barn's silhouette against the pale sky. Rebecca knows the law's spirit, to protect rest, to keep town and country in quiet communion. Yet each time she enforces it, she feels the tension between order and joy. With sturdy boots crunching on frost-nipped grass, she approaches the barn, swears to herself that if she catches any rogue drumstick wielded beyond duty, she'll handle them with firmness, and perhaps a touch of compassion, born from her own past folly. At the meeting-house balcony, Jonas Clark stands beside Pastor Elijah Parris, who delivers a prayer for peaceful slumber. The midnight drummer's duty finished, Jonas's silent drum sits at his side as the pastor drifts over the gathering. Colonial law mandated that any music or ceremony after the curfew bell be subdued. A whispered devoutness approved, but no trumpets, no drums. Here, at the community's spiritual heart, both man of faith and man of duty find common cause in quietude. Jonas bows his head while Pastor Parris intones blessings. May the Lord grant your minds repose, your hearts calm. Warm lanterns glow behind them, faces softened by both faith and law. Even the wooden pews seem to inhale in reverence. Below, villagers stand in respectful hush, recalling how once loud hymns and joyous choruses spilled into the night, waking the infirm and troubling weary dreamers. Now is enough to carry hope without disturbance. As the final amen fades, Jonas lifts his drum briefly, just a single soft tap, to signal the night watch's end, then rests, letting silence envelop the town. Pastor Parris smiles. Good night, neighbors. Jonas tucks drumstick into his belt, sharing a nod with the pastor. Together, their solemn gestures honor a law that bound faith, work, and rest in a shared promise of tomorrow's dawn. As dusk settles over Concord's timber-framed cottages, Abigail Prescott gathers her flax around a worn spinning wheel in the corner of her parlor. The setting sun's last rays filter through leaded windows, dancing on the pale linen fibers. Yet colonial law forbade spinning, or any wheel-driven textile work, after the curfew bell's third toll, deeming the rhythmic whir too loud for households at rest. Abigail dips her fingers into a bowl of warm water, softening the flax and steadying her nerves. She recalls her mother's frantic whisper, "Finish before the bell, Abigail, or the law will demand hush instead of industry." Tonight she races against time. Each spin must be deliberate, threading a fine single of linen just so. Beyond her hearth, the wind, through the oaks, as if urging her on, but the law brooked no exceptions. Women whose wheels clicked past curfew could face confiscation of their equipment, a heavy setback for any homestead reliant on homemade cloth. As the first bell tolls, Abigail's wheel hums in response. With each passing ring, her heart pounds in time. She imagines black-clad constables, lanterns bobbing on muddy paths, arriving to silence her spinning, and faces the possibility of leaving her family with nothing but bare linens come winter. With deft hands, she draws the final yard of thread, cuts it cleanly, and sets her distaff aside. The last echo of the bell fades. Abigail, smoothing her palms on her apron. In Colonial Massachusetts, peace reigned at night. Even thrumming wheels had to rest, ensuring sleepy families awoke untroubled by mechanical lullabies. Meanwhile, young Samuel Turner tiptoes through his father's workshop, where a small child's toy loom perches beside the big spinning wheel. He's determined to weave a simple cloth for his mother's birthday, unwittingly breaking the sundown spinning prohibition. His tiny fingers tug at yarns, coaxing them through wooden heddles. Each gentle clack of the loom's reed feels to him like a secret lullaby. But to colonial magistrates, even children's textile play counted as spinning after dusk. Samuel glances at the curfew bell tower beyond the open window and calculates how many minutes remain. The hooded oil lamp barely illuminates his task. Shadows of yarn dance on the walls. He recalls older siblings warning him that the law didn't spare innocents. Even a boy's toy apparatus could be seized if it disturbed the night's quiet. His heart flutters as the second bell tolls. He works faster, weaving a hopeful pattern of blue wool and white linen. With the third toll looming, Samuel lifts the loom's beater one final time, pushing the last weft into place. Frantically, he gathers stray yarns and cradles his miniature cloth close. The bell's last echo fades. He sharply, cheeks flushed, then scrambles back to bed, the child's woven gift hidden beneath his pillow. In colonial households, even innocent crafts bowed to communal serenity. No spinning, no weaving after sundown. At the home of Mistress Eleanor Bradshaw, evening visitors gather for a quiet spinning bee, a communal tradition now curtailed by the sundown spinning law. In her low-ceiling spinning room, 6 women sit in a half-circle, flax and wool at their knees. Eleanor's polished wheel stands ready, but the spinning ban means that, after the bell's third knell, each must store their tools and settle into hushed conversation over herbal tea. The room smells of chamomile and lavender as Eleanor pours steaming cups into simple earthenware mugs. The women exchange gentle laughter, reminiscing how, before the ordinance, they shared stories and spun cloth through candlelight until well past midnight. Now, the law decrees that spinning must end with the last toll, enforcing silence and encouraging more intimate gatherings. Tonight, they plan a daytime bee instead, mindful that their wheels must rest each night. As the first bell tolls faintly outside, Eleanor raises her mug in a mock salute, a quiet tribute to the law that shapes their lives. The women softly smile and, one by one, gently dismantle their spinning wheels, wrapping wool into baskets and placing spindles on low shelves. In colonial Massachusetts, even the hum of creativity bowed to communal calm, yet in that polite surrender, these friends find new warmth in shared tea and soft conversation. On the edge of the village green, Constable Abigail Carter patrols the silent lanes, her keen eyes alert for after-dark spinners' whir. That night, a faint click-clack reaches her, too regular to be hoofbeats or shutters. She follows the sound to a cottage door left ajar. Inside, she glimpses Widow Hammond's spinning wheel, still turning softly in the lamplight. Under the sundown spinning law, Widow Hammond's fine wool shawls, spun for market, must wait until morning. Abigail knocks firmly. The wheel halts with a startled clatter. Widow Hammond, in her midnight chemise, peeks around the doorframe. She offers a timid apology, explaining that she lost track of the bell while soothing her sick granddaughter. Abigail's stern gaze softens at the mention of illness. She issues a caution rather than a fine, reminding the widow that mercy lives alongside law. But that silence at night safeguards the vulnerable from every clatter and creak. As Abigail retreats into the dark, she muses on the law's balance of order and compassion. Even in enforcing silence, she finds moments for kindness, ensuring that spinning wheels rest and families too find peace under colonial skies. By the meeting house steps, Deacon Jonathan Shaw records the day's incidents in his ledger. Curfew warnings, drifting boats, and tonight's single spinning violation. He dips his quill in ink, the feather's tip glinting in lantern light. Under the sundown spinning law, he must track every infraction to advise the magistrates at dawn. Behind him, the silhouette of the curfew bell tower towers over polished wood benches. Jonathan's ledger entry reads simply, Hammond, spinning after sundown, caution issued. He pauses, imagining the widow's trembling hands at the wheel hours before. He wonders if the law's compassion matched its severity. In colonial Massachusetts, rules ruled not just by decree, but by the hearts of those who enforced them. He closes his ledger, caps the ink, and straightens his collar. The hush around him deepens, as if awaiting tomorrow's sunrise. In that silence, Jonathan feels the law's true purpose: to still the world so each soul may awaken refreshed, free from the clatter of wheels and the anxiety of broken rest. With a final look at the dark town, he tucks the ledger under his arm and heads home, footsteps echoing softly on the cobblestones, an echo fitting for a world at peace. At dawn's pale light, Mary Farnsworth arranges vellum permits on the long oak desk in Salem's town hall. Each permit, etched with the official seal, authorizes a single household lantern to burn through the night. Colonial law dictated that no lantern could remain lit after the bell's third curfew toll without a license. Unlicensed lights risked confiscation and fines. Mary's quill scratches across parchment as neighbors file in. A weary fisherman looking for a permit to light his dock lantern, a baker seeking an extra license for pre-dawn ovens, and a nurse needing a lamp for bedside care. The license system balanced public safety against family needs. Too many glowing windows invited thieves. Too few left late-shift workers stumbling in darkness. Mary greets each petitioner with calm courtesy, reviewing their petitions and stamping their permits. Outside, the sea breeze rattles the hall's shutters, reminding her of the harbor's dark expanse. Each permit she issues is both promise and warning. A promise that the bearer may guide their steps after hours, and a warning that light without leave would be swiftly punished. By midday, rows of issued lantern licenses lay ready for collection. Mary imagines each bronze seal reflecting lamplight in quiet parlors, front steps, and back alleys. In colonial Massachusetts, light was as tightly regulated as sound, each flame measured, each glow accounted for, ensuring a measured calm under starry skies. As twilight deepens, Joseph Clark inspects his newly acquired lantern license by his hearth. A traveling saddler by trade, he depends on his lamp for last-minute repairs and late deliveries. Joseph tightens the oil reservoir and adjusts the brass reflector, mindful of the license's terms: burn only a single wick and extinguish exactly at the third curfew toll. The permit's bronze seal glints in the lantern's glow. He remembers the cautionary tale of old Samuel Green, who neglected to renew his permit and found his lantern impounded by patrolling officers, forcing him to trudge home in pitch darkness on a winter's eve. Joseph's fingers tremble slightly as he ignites the wick. The flame's golden glow dances across his leather hides and buckles. Outside, the evening breeze carries the scent of pine, promising a quiet night. With permit in hand, Joseph steps onto his front stoop, lantern raised just high enough to light the path. In colonial Massachusetts, every lamplight had its price, measured by law, watched by patrols, and counted in community registers. Joseph's heart swells with gratitude. In regulated glow, he finds both safety and the freedom to ply his craft when others sleep. Under a star-sprinkled sky, Constable Jonas McAllister patrols the narrow lanes, lantern swaying at his belt. His duty: ensure only licensed lamps burn after curfew. His keen eyes catch a faint glow through the shuttered windows of Widow Thompson's cottage. He approaches, lantern raised. The widow, herself a licensed midwife, has her permit prominently displayed, but Jonas must verify its authenticity. She welcomes him with a respectful curtsy, gesturing toward the framed parchment above the mantel. Jonas inspects the seal, well pressed, unblemished, satisfied. Satisfied, he tips his hat and moves on. Moments later, he hears a hushed clamor down the lane, a dim, flickering candle in a window too small to house an official lamp. Kneeling by the window, he recognizes a family of weavers struggling under the ban on secondary lights. Jonas's duty compels him to seize any illicit flame, yet compassion holds his hand. He quietly slips away, choosing to warn them later, rather than leave them helpless through the night. The lantern license law demanded strict enforcement, but Jonas finds balance in mercy. As he continues his rounds, he understands that light and life often intertwine. Sometimes, kindness needed no license at all. In the shadow of the meeting house, young Thomas Baker sneaks a small tallow candle through his coat, an illicit glow for late-night mischief. The lantern license law forbade any secondary lights, candles or torches, after curfew, unless licensed. Thomas creeps toward his friends gathered behind a barn, eager to show off his forbidden flame. They light a single candle and whisper jokes, the tiny flame dancing across their grinning faces. But before long, Jonas McAllister's patrol lantern appears, casting long shadows. Thomas's heart thunders as the constable's beam falls on the outlawed candle. Jonas strides forward, raises his staff, and orders the boys to drop the flame. In Colonial Massachusetts, even youthful pranks met with stern rebuke. Thomas's friends scatter into the dark. When asked, Thomas offers a trembling apology. Jonas collects the tallow candle and warns him of the fine for repeated infractions. He returns the candle's stub, no wick, no permit, so that Thomas cannot relight it. As the constable's lantern recedes, Thomas pockets the candle stub and slinks home, chastened yet oddly exhilarated by the brush with law. That night, the barnyard lies silent, the only light coming from licensed lamps in distant windows, proof that in provincial colonies order reigned over every flicker. At the meeting house's lantern-lit vigil, Reverend Samuel Pierce leads a silent prayer for those who labor by night. Each family's licensed lamp casts a steady glow across the square's flagstones. The congregation bows heads, the hush punctuated only by breathing and distant tides. Colonial law permitted this single communal light, provided every lamp bore a valid permit. Samuel steps forward with a small lantern, its brass seal shining in the soft glow. He raises it high, reverently. Let this regulated light remind us that even in darkness, Providence guides our steps. Lanterns frame his silhouette as faces lift toward him, trust gleaming in their eyes. Under this ordinance, lamp licenses transform from civic burdens into symbols of unity, each flame a beacon of shared responsibility. When the vigil ends, Samuel watches his parishioners return to their homes, lamps glowing like fireflies en route. He contemplates how the lantern law shaped not only nights, but community spirit. In colonial Massachusetts, every licensed light was a pledge to protect the weak, deter the wicked, and ensure the town slept safely under measured glow. With that thought, sighs he lowers his lantern, and the vigil disperses into harmonious quiet. Every lamp extinguished at the curfew bell, leaving behind a tapestry of stars overhead, and the promise of dawn. Just after dusk in Plymouth, a weary traveller named Elias Beaumont approaches the timbered town hall, hood drawn against the chill. Under the stranger registration edict, any newcomer, merchant, preacher, or vagabond must present themselves by the third curfew bell or risk detention. Elias, carrying a satchel of exotic spices, pauses beneath the lantern-lit eaves, heart pounding at each toll. Inside, Town Clerk Abigail Marsh sits at a heavy oaken desk, candle smoke curling overhead. She records names, origins, and reasons for visit in a well-worn ledger. Tonight's slate already lists a Dutch fur trader, a Scottish weaver, and a French Huguenot scholar. Elias steps forward as the third toll fades. He removes his hood and presents a worn letter of introduction sealed in red wax. Abigail scans the document, quill poised, balancing caution and courtesy. In colonial Massachusetts, the registry aimed to guard communities from unsavory elements, soldiers of foreign armies, itinerant beggars, but also to welcome skilled artisans who bolstered the settlement. As Abigail inscribes Elias's name and trade, she offers a quiet nod of welcome. Outside, lanterns flicker on shuttered windows, the town lulled by the knowledge that every stranger's arrival is both noted and watched. Outside the registry room, Benjamin Carter, a local constable, patrols with lantern held high. His eyes scan each newcomer loitering near the door, ensuring no soul skirts the registration requirement. Under the edict, failure to register meant a night in the stocks. Repeat refusal could mean banishment. Benjamin's heavy wool cloak sways as he rounds the corner, spotting a nervous peddler of medicinal herbs attempting to slip past the entrance unnoticed. The peddler, Marta Weiss, hesitates with a basket of dried chamomile and foxglove. Benjamin's lantern beam lands on her, and he calls out in a firm yet gentle voice, "Step this way, madam. The clerk is eager to know your purpose." Marta's cheeks flush, but she follows. As they re-enter the warm glow of the registry chamber, Benjamin feels the fine line between enforcement and empathy. The edict's strictures kept towns safe from spies or smugglers, but each encounter reminded him that strangers were more often travelers seeking refuge than threats. Inside the cold registry, Abigail Marsh reviews Marta's plea to sell herbs for the sick. Marta explains how foxglove poultices and chamomile teas eased local fevers and sleepless nights. Under the edict, those offering health services were subject to extra scrutiny. Colonial authorities feared unlicensed healers might do more harm than good. Abigail listens, quill paused, as Marta extracts a small vial of marigold oil. The clerk examines the vial, studies Marta's smooth, practiced hands, and finally records her name, trade, and proposed destinations. As Abigail's quill scratches across parchment, Marta exhales, sharply, breathes easier, knowing she'll be free to traverse the colonies with her remedies. Outside, Elias Beaumont nods encouragement through the window, his own registration complete. The registry desk becomes a crossroads of crafts and cures, each stranger documented, yet humanized through polite exchange. In Colonial Massachusetts, the edicts safeguarded towns without extinguishing the spark of new ideas and medicines that enriched daily life. As midnight nears, a cluster of unregistered sailors lingers by the waterfront tavern, uncertain whether to risk a callous magistrate or brave the stocks. Word has spread that the edict's enforcement sells in tradesmen's gossip as good theatre and dreadful punishment. Suddenly, Abigail Marsh and Constable Benjamin Carter emerge from the lantern-lit registry, quill and staff in hand. They move purposefully toward the sailors. The sailors, nervously, eyes flicking nervously, step forward one by one. Abigail calmly requests their names and origins. Benjamin notes their dates of arrival. Each man, rough-hewn and sea salt-scented, proffers his story. Stranded crew, seeking passage to Boston. Some carry letters of marque, others, simple pleas for work. Abigail inscribes each detail. Benjamin secures their signatures with a pinch of coercion and a dash of kindness. By the time the final bell tolls, every sailor is registered, permitting safe passage and warding off midnight seizures. As the officers depart, the sailors exchange nods of gratitude. The edict, though strict, offered them a foothold in a wary land. Beneath the moon's silver glow, the registry's pages brim with new faces. Proof that colonial law, when tempered by fairness, could bind strangers into community, rather than cast them aside. In the dawn's earliest light, Elias Beaumont and Marta Weiss cross paths on Market Square, each bearing their freshly stamped permits. Elias carries pouches of clove and cardamom, while Marta balances her basket of chamomile. They exchange polite greetings, marveling at how the stranger registration edict brought them together under a common purpose. Nearby, Abigail Marsh shelves the ledger in a locked cabinet, her office silent, save for the creak of wooden floorboards. She reflects on each entry, lives briefly intersecting with hers in candlelit minutes. The edict's pages now brim with names from France, Scotland, the Netherlands, and even distant Barbados. By sunrise, these strangers will disperse, some travelling onward, others settling in for weeks or years. Abigail steps outside into the soft morning glow, inhaling the crisp air. She watches Elias load spices onto a cart and Marta provide chamomile to a doctor setting up a makeshift infirmary. In this shared dawn, the registration no longer feels like a barrier, but a welcoming mat. A way to know who joins the colony, to protect its people, and to knit newcomers into the fabric of daily life. As the sun rises, she allows herself a quiet smile, certain that colonial law, at its best, guarded both peace and possibility. In the sun-washed meeting house yard of Dedham, the magistrates convene under a banner reading, "For the good of all." Today's docket includes a new ordinance. Any youth caught in disorderly conduct, from fistfights in the street to obscene language, must perform a day of public fasting. The law's aim to teach humility and restraint, visible to neighbours and peers. Magistrate Jonathan Fletcher, robes swaying in the morning breeze, proclaims the edict to gathered townsfolk, his voice clear and steady. Mothers clutch their shawls, fathers nod in approval. A hush falls as young faces absorb the gravity of shame turned into penance. The fasting law, they murmur, will temper youthful pride and ensure peaceful nights. 15-year-old Rebecca Shaw stands before the magistrates, head bowed. She'd been caught sprinting through the market square at dusk, scattering apples from Widow Hawkins' stall. Such wanton mischief under the fasting law demands a day without sustenance, publicly endured at the very stall she disrupted. Rebecca's cheeks flush as the magistrate pronounces her sentence. Nearby vendors and shoppers watch in solemn silence. Some recall their own youthful indiscretions, while others feel righteous satisfaction. Rebecca's mother grips her daughter's shoulder, offering a gentle squeeze. The law's lesson: remorse must be as visible as the offence. The pangs of hunger, a humble reminder that community welfare outweighs momentary thrills. As midday sun climbs, Rebecca sits on a wooden bench by the apple stall, her fast in full effect. The aromas of fresh bread and roasting lamb waft teasingly from nearby booths, but her palate must remain disciplined. Townspeople pass, offering sympathetic glances, but no morsel. Children tug at their mother's skirts. Is she hungry? Rebecca grips her skirts, determined. Her punishment is not cruel. She may sip water, but the empty ache in her stomach underscores communal order's cost. Gradually, curiosity turns to empathy. Widow Hawkins approaches, placing a small bowl of plain broth just beyond Rebecca's reach. "For your strength," she whispers, though the law forbids direct aid. Rebecca meets the widow's gentle smile and nods in silent gratitude, vowing to mend her ways. The public fast, designed to shame, instead weaves threads of compassion into the colony's moral fabric, reminding all that discipline and mercy walk hand in hand. By late afternoon, Rebecca's hunger sharpens every sound. Vendors' calls, horse hooves, children's laughter. Yet the fasting edict mandates she remain in public view until sunset. 2 constables stand discreetly nearby, ensuring nobody sneaks her food. Their lanterns rest unused, their presence more symbolic than practical. Rebecca's stomach clenches each time a loaf is cut or meat skewers sizzle. She bends her head, recalling lessons of temperance and respect. Public fasting may seem harsh, but colonial leaders believed that visible contrition cultivated community harmony, deterring further misconduct. An older youth, Thomas Whitfield, condemned last month for graffiti on the meeting house door, approaches Rebecca with a polite nod. He too endured a day's fast, yet saw the mercy in the magistrate's decision. Now with mature eyes, thoughtful, he offers Rebecca water from his canteen. She accepts quietly, grateful for shared solidarity among reforming youths. The constables glance over but say nothing, understanding that compassion sometimes softens laws without breaking them. As the sun dips below the horizon, casting the market in golden dusk, the final curfew bell rings, a signal that Rebecca's ordeal ends. The constables step forward and formally release her from public penance. Rebecca rises, weak but resolute, bowing to the small crowd. Magistrate Fletcher appears, placing a consoling hand on her shoulder, and offering a loaf of plain bread, an emblem of restored standing rather than indulgence. The crowd murmurs approval. Townsfolk gather to escort her home with gentle applause. Rebecca clutches the bread to her chest, tears of relief pricking her eyes. The public fast, intended as a corrective spectacle, concludes with a communal embrace, an acknowledgement that discipline matures, both individual and society. As Rebecca departs under lantern glow, she senses a deeper bond with her neighbors, a vow etched in hunger and kindness. Colonial Massachusetts, through laws of visible penance, wove its young into the tapestry of communal virtue, reminding all that growth often blooms from shared trials and the compassion that follows. As twilight deepens over Boston Commons, gentle murmurs ripple through the clusters of garden tables. Tonight's special ordinance: no syllabub or any whipped cream-topped ale may be served outdoors after the third curfew bell. Colonial magistrates feared the frothy delight's sticky spoons and slurped lips would disturb the common's serenity. Lady Imogen Pierce, hostess of the evening's alfresco gathering, stands beside a trestle table laden with porcelain bowls of spiced syllabub. She watches lantern-lit patrons arrive, each clutching a silver spoon. The dancing steam of mulled cider rises in the cooling air, mingling with sweet cream scents. Lady Pierce recalls last year's midnight revels, when exuberant tasters rapped their spoons on tables in rhythm and shattered the night's hush. From then on, magistrates decreed a syllabub curfew. Any cream-based amuse-bouche must end by curfew. As Lady Pierce pours the first bowls, she murmurs a quiet toast to flavor without fuss and to peace beneath the same stars that watched Puritan forebears pray. Tonight, she'll serve her famous rosewater syllabub, but only until the bell tolls thrice. In colonial Massachusetts, even dessert bowed to communal calm, ensuring all could drift to sleep untroubled by whipped cream scythe. Beneath a canopy of lantern-lit oak branches, Thomas Bradford, Boston's deputy constable, patrols the commons with a keen eye. He carries a slender staff topped with a polished brass bell, an implement used to gently remind hosts when their syllabub service must cease. As guests dip spoons into creamy rosewater froth, Thomas listens for any rising clatter. The law allowed discreet endings. A single gentle chime at the third curfew toll signaled that the spoons must rest. As the first bell echoes, Thomas raises his brass chime once, softly, politely. Some guests murmur at the reminder, others smile knowingly. By colonial decree, hosts must acknowledge the chime with a final ladle and then withdraw all cream dishes indoors. Thomas's measured approach balances enforcement with courtesy, ensuring the commons remains a haven for rest. He recalls the last crackdown, when heavy-handed constables seized entire bowls of syllabub, leaving guests disgruntled and magistrates embarrassed. Tonight, thanks to this gentler tool, dessert and decorum coexist under starlight. At a nearby arbor, Mistress Rebecca Carlton orchestrates a quieter refreshment. Spiced syllabub, sipped from tiny wooden cups. Her arrangement of elderflower and nutmeg ensures less spoon clatter, an approved adaptation to the curfew law. As the second bell tolls, she gently motions to her maid, who begins replacing porcelain dishes with wooden cups. The hushed switch delights guests. The soft hiss of cream pouring into wood is barely audible, a clever nod to colonial rules governing outdoor serving. Mistress Carlton moves gracefully among her circle, draping pashminas over shoulders and offering honeyed nuts alongside the cream. She had studied the ordinance carefully, learning that wooden vessels fell outside the strict syllabub curfew guidelines. Tonight, she demonstrates how creativity can honor both hospitality and law. Beneath the arbor's woven vines, she watches her guests, whispering laughter as they lift their cups in a silent toast. In colonial Massachusetts, ingenuity often flourished within the constraints of communal peace. A group of young scholars from Harvard College, books tucked under arms, gather at the common's edge, debating philosophy over bowls of syllabub. Their deep voices risked breaching both curfew sound and syllabub rules. When the third bell looms, they pause mid-argument. No more than 3 chimes, the law decrees. Their mentor, Professor Samuel Quincy, raises an ivory flute and plays a soft nocturne instead, an acceptable post-curfew sound under a separate ordinance permitting soft music, so long as percussion ceased. The scholars chuckle softly, cradling their empty bowls as the music drifts through oak boughs. Quincy's flute notes swirl like cream whipped into clouds, guiding tongues from cream to melody. In that musical hush, the Commons finds a new serenity, a blend of learned discourse and harmonic lullaby. Even colonial laws against outdoor syllabub service could not silence the human spirit's creative cadence. As lanterns flicker their final glow, Lady Imogen Pierce presides over the closing, a solemn last taste of syllabub poured into small glass vials and sealed with wax. Each guest receives a vial to enjoy at home, off license and by firelight, so that the spirit of the evening lingers without contravening the outdoor curfew. She moves gracefully among her guests, pressing vials into pale hands and offering whispering farewells. When the final bell tolls, Thomas Bradford returns, staff in hand. He nods to Lady Pierce, who inclines her head in gratitude. The Commons falls silent, save for the soft rustle of cloaks and the distant hoot of an owl. Guests depart along lantern-lit paths, carrying their wax-sealed syllabub vials as tokens of a night balanced between indulgence and restraint. In colonial Massachusetts, even dessert obeyed the laws of peace. Yet ingenuity ensured the sweetness of the evening would endure, through whispered memories and wax-sealed delight. At dawn's first pale glow, the pound-keeper's cottage sits beside a sturdy oak gate leading to the town pound, a fenced enclosure of rough-hewn posts and fresh hay. Josephine Mercer stirs porridge on the hearth as the curfew bell's final echo still lingers. By colonial decree, any stray animal found roaming after sunset, goats nibbling garden fences, pigs rooting in lanes, must be rounded up at daybreak and impounded. Owners pay poundage fees to reclaim their beasts, teaching responsibility and preserving nightly peace. Josephine dons her worn wool cloak and steps into the crisp air, lantern in hand. A bleating goat tugs at the pound's paling. Beside it, a trotting pig sniffs new straw. The pound-keeper's ledger lies open on a stump. Today's entries already include Master Whitby's goat and Widow Clark's sow. Josephine records each creature's mark, torn ear or bristled hide, to ensure the right owner pays the fine. In colonial Massachusetts, the town pound served both as animal impound and moral metaphor, stray creatures corralled to protect the community's order. As she lifts the goat's rope and leads it into a pen, Josephine recalls how a flock of geese once disturbed midnight vigils with noisy honks, prompting the magistrates to tighten pound rules. Now, morning visitors will come with coins jingling in pockets, grateful for the pound's gentle yet firm reminder that every beast, like every person, has its place and curfew. By mid-morning, the pound yard buzzes as farmers and townsfolk arrive to reclaim their wandering stock. Samuel Whitby strides up, boots echoing on the cobbles, his goat bleating for freedom. He crosses hands with Josephine, counting out the required 6pence, plus a morning's hay ration. The pound-keeper accepts the coins, stamps them onto a parchment receipt, then unwraps the penned goat. Samuel strokes its coarse neck, murmuring apologies for its nocturnal adventure. Nearby, Mistress Annabel Clark presents a handful of carrots to coax her sow forward. Under the edict, any animal must be left a token feed before release, teaching owners to care for beasts' nightly quiet and comfort. Josephine watches these exchanges, heart warmed by gratitude and sheepish apologies. For villagers, reclaiming a prized animal signified both relief and a pledge to heed the town's curfew laws, for beasts and humans alike. As Samuel leads his goat away, he tips his hat to Josephine. "Thank you, keeper. I'll mind the gate tonight." She smiles, noting in her ledger that every recovered animal leaves with a renewed sense of order. A sudden cry echoes from the lane. Children point to a white mare standing forlorn near the tavern door. Under the pound law, any large beast found alone after dusk falls under impound authority, and children who report strays earn a penny reward. Josephine hurries to inspect the horse's brand, a lightning bolt over an arch. Recognizing it as belonging to Mistress Abigail Turner, she leads the mare gently down the lane, children in tow, lantern light dancing on its flanks. Mistress Turner arrives breathless at the pound gate, tears of relief shining in dawn's glow. She presents her branded parchment. Josephine nods, recording the mare's return and dispensing a penny to the enthusiastic youngsters. The horse nuzzles one child before being led to its pen, an act that binds community, animal, and law in shared care. In Colonial Massachusetts, every stray recovery underscored neighborly vigilance, ensuring both two-legged and four-legged townsfolk honored evening limits. Inside the pound keeper's cottage, Josephine sits by the fire, mending broken bridles and stitching leather halters. Impounded animals often arrive injured or tethered poorly. Colonial law required pound keepers to provide basic care until owner redemption. As wooden floorboards creak, she glances at her simple spinning wheel, unused since sunup, reminding herself that caretaking extends beyond fences. A soft knock announces Thomas Green, the local blacksmith, bringing a battered bridle from a lost mare's pen. He carries oil and tools to help repair cracked straps. Josephine lights a tallow candle, and together they work. Thomas hammers a new buckle clasp. Josephine stitches torn leather. Their quiet collaboration underscores the law's humane intent, protecting animals from nighttime harm and guiding owners back to responsibility. By the time the work is done, Josephine places repaired harness by the door, ready for tomorrow's redemption. In Colonial Massachusetts, the town pound was not merely punitive, but a place of restoration, where stray lives and broken gear found repair under watchful eyes. As the sun climbs high, Josephine returns to the pound yard to release a flock of geese, once caught honking past curfew at the riverbank. Their owner, old Ben Parkinson, appears with breadcrumbs to lead them home. Josephine lifts the pen's latch and the flock waddles forth in a clattering parade, their feathers gleaming white against worn wood. Ben tips his hat, scattering crumbs. The geese follow his crooning call. He nods gratefully to Josephine and tucks a silver farthing into her palm, half fee, half tip for her care. She watches them disappear down the lane, the pound yard now empty and still, save for rustling straw. In that moment, Josephine reflects on the pound's quiet power. It corrals chaos, mends broken things, and reunites community members with what they value most. As she gathers her ledger and closes the oak gate, she knows the town pound ensures that both beasts and citizens learn the bounds of liberty and the gentle rule of law that brings them safely home. As the third curfew bell tolls across Concord, a unique ordinance takes effect. From that moment until sunrise, women of the town enjoy a designated hour of silence in public spaces, an enforced pause meant to honor their rest and privacy. In the central market square, Mary Alden gathers her embroidery under a striped wool shawl, settling onto a weathered bench. Street vendors at nearby stalls lower their voices and refrain from hawking wares. The law, penned by female advocates and approved by the magistrates, acknowledges that women's voices and labor deserved respect after a day's toil. Mary smooths her needlework, delicate silk threads weaving floral motifs, while nearby, apprentices hush their banter. Fathers gently guide their children away from Mary's bench, mindful of the silent vigil. Even the church bells remain muted until the hour ends, replaced by the of wind through birch leaves. In Colonial Massachusetts, this women's silent hour represented both reverence and practicality. It ensured that wives, mothers, and sisters had a respite from public demands, a societal promise of gentle repose under lantern-lit skies. As Mary lifts her cloth to stitch the final petal, she reflects on the day's burdens, fetching water from the well, tending to sick neighbors, and teaching her children their prayers. Now, in this hushed hour, she cherishing the gift of unbroken quiet. In the heart of Boston's North End, shopkeeper Abigail Turner locks the door to her apothecary as the silent hour commences. Earlier, she'd dispensed soothing tinctures and balms to weary mothers and anxious husbands. Now, she lights a single beeswax candle behind frosted glass, its dim glow reserved for emergencies as the law permits only licensed midwives and healers to break the silence if lives are at stake. The apothecary's sign swings gently in the breeze, and cobblestone streets grow hushed. Abigail arranges medicinal jars on polished shelves, camphor, willow bark, lavender oil, reminding herself that this hour of peace serves both body and spirit. A nervous knock sounds at the shuttered window, a midwife seeking elderflower water for a feverish child. Beyond the curve of the moonlit alley, Abigail recognizes Sister Priscilla's silhouette. With care, she slides a small vial through the window's hatch, an allowed exception under the ordinance's safeguard clause. The hush returns swiftly. Abigail extinguishes the interior lantern, leaving only a faint glow from the back room. In that soft darkness, she contemplates how women's silent hour ensured every voice was valued. Mothers could rest without unsolicited calls, and healers discerned urgent pleas through respectful channels. Beneath the night sky, the apothecary stands as a beacon of measured care, its gentle promise honored in every silent second. Along the riverbank, seamstress Esther Green finishes mending a fisherman's nets under a lantern permitted for work of necessity. The silent hour's decree allows select trades, like midwifery, medical care, and emergency repairs, to operate quietly under licensed approval. Esther's nimble fingers knot linen thread, repairing a tear in the sailcloth that threatened to strand her neighbor's boat. The gentle hiss of knots pulling taut is the only sound beneath the rustling reeds. She recalls the day magistrates debated extending the silent hour's protections. Some argued it stifled commerce, others that it preserved women's dignity. Ultimately, the council granted licensed artisans like her limited, silent exemptions. She takes pride in her role, her quiet craft ensuring her community's safety while honoring the collective hush. As the curfew bell's third toll fades, Esther ties off the final stitch, folds the repaired net, and steps back into the darkened path, leaving the fisherman's lantern-lit skiff ready for dawn's voyage. In Colonial Massachusetts, the balance of silencing chatter yet sustaining essential work spoke to a society striving for equitable rest, so that those who give comfort may also receive it. In a quiet courtyard, behind the meeting house, a circle of women gather for an unspoken solidarity ritual. Shared silence in prayer for loved ones at sea. Under the silent hour, even devotions must be wordless. Soft clasped hands and bowed heads replacing hymns and spoken blessings. Margaret Winslow stands at the circle's edge, clutching a small seashell talisman. She remembers her husband's departure on a fishing voyage that morning, uncertain if he'll return. Each woman holds a candle, flames hidden behind frosted glass lanterns, to honor the ordinance. They raise their candles in unison, tilting wrists in synchronized rhythm, a silent chant of hope. The night wind carries the distant lap of ocean waves, amplifying their shared vigil. No whisper passes lips, their hearts speak through the flicker of light, each flame a prayer. As the final bell tolls, they lower their lanterns and disperse, the hush lingering like a warm embrace. In Colonial Massachusetts, women's silent hour became more than law. It wove a quiet sisterhood, a testament that sometimes the deepest bonds form without spoken word. As dawn's first light brushes rooftops, Mary Alden emerges from her home and walks slowly through the commons, now freeing her voice at last. Birds awaken with song. Vendors set up stalls calling greetings. The silent hour's end brings relief and renewal. Mary hums a gentle tune, her voice a soft gift to the morning, as she carries a basket of freshly baked rolls to share with neighbors. The commons, recently still under moon and law, now teems with ordinary chatter, children's laughter, friendly bartering, minister's verse drifting through open windows. Mary pauses beneath an oak, breathing in the mingled aromas of pine and baked bread. She reflects on the ordinance's gift, a nightly haven of respect, a communal promise upheld by every shuttered stall and softened voice. In colonial Massachusetts, laws like the Women's Silent Hour acknowledged that rest was not merely absence of work, but presence of quiet dignity. Mary's first post-curfew words weave into the dawn chorus, a living testament that even stone of meeting houses and rings of curfew bells bow in time to human need for both rest and renewal. On a crisp Sunday morning in Dorchester, worshippers gather at the meeting house of the First Parish, its tall windows spilling soft light onto packed benches. Colonial law mandates a strict aisle capacity rule. No more than 2 pews may be left open at each aisle, ensuring orderly entry and exit and preventing overcrowding that could choke passage in emergencies. Inside, families jockey gently for seats, mindful of the rule's dual purpose, safety and solemnity. Reverend Ezekiel Morris stands at the pulpit, surveying the congregation through rimless spectacles. He recalls the fire that nearly consumed a meeting house in Maine 2 years prior, when packed pews blocked escape routes. In response, Massachusetts magistrates instituted aisle regulations. Today, he will remind parishioners of both spiritual and physical stewardship. God's word calls for open hearts and open aisles. Across the nave, the sexton, widow Lydia Parker, discreetly counts empty spaces, tallying benches to confirm compliance. She notes the hush that falls as hymn books close and heads bow. Each occupied pew, she knows, must leave its share of clear passage, 2 benches per aisle, so that the faithful may file in and out without jostle or panic. In colonial Massachusetts, church and civic law intertwine to guide both souls and bodies toward order, respect, and safety. As the opening hymn swells, the north and south aisles hum with melodic voices. Yet Widow Parker notices 2 late arrivals, Mr. Samuel and his wife, unable to find seats within compliance, and gestures politely toward a designated overflow gallery at the rear. Colonial regulations required that any extra attendees be seated either in a balcony or adjoining room, linked by windows and sound tubes, to prevent cramped aisles. Samuel Whitfield exchanges a brief, apologetic glance with his wife before following Mrs. Parker's guiding lantern light through a narrow passage. The gallery's creaky floorboards echo beneath their boots. Inside, a modest assembly of elders and infirm sit in respectful silence, content to hear the sermon via a speaking tube connecting to the pulpit's edge. Though second-tier seating lacked the pulpit's grandeur, it embodied colonial Massachusetts's commitment to communal worship that valued safety over proximity. Below, the main floor hums with uninterrupted worship. The gallery attendees press their ears to the wooden speaking tube, marveling at how voices carry, another ingenious adaptation to uphold both inclusion and regulation. As Reverend Morris's voice resonates overhead, every soul, front and back, receives the same spiritual nourishment, proving that even laws born of caution can foster unity and devotion. Midway through the sermon, Reverend Morris pauses to deliver a gentle admonition. Let us remember that our laws protect both body and spirit. He gestures toward the aisles, lit by afternoon sun. On the main floor, seamed benches stretch in parallel lines, each flanked by 2 empty benches at the aisle's edge. Children lean forward, fascinated by the careful pattern of space. In the aisle stands Deacon Abigail Shaw, clipboard in hand. Her task, ensure that no more than 2 pews separate occupied benches, marking any infractions in small red chalk. She recalls her own youthful rush to secure a seat, only to be guided to the gallery by Reverend Morris himself, teaching her early the importance of order and mercy. Now her presence is subtle, just a nod here, a soft tap of chalk there, yet vital to upholding the rule's spirit. Behind her, a teenage apprentice smooths hymn pages, readying pews for the next service. The partnership between clergy and laity demonstrates colonial Massachusetts' communal approach. Worship required structure, and structure required gentle enforcement. As Morris resumes his sermon on charity and discipline, every cleared aisle stands as testament to a faith that treasured safety as much as salvation. As the service draws to a close, the final blessing echoes through the nave. Parishioners stand slowly, smoothing skirts and straightening coats. The aisle rule ensures the recessional proceeds without disorder. Clear paths allow families, elders, and infants in cradles to exit in calm procession. At the threshold, Elder Thomas Brewster greets departing congregants with a respectful nod, guiding them toward the north or south doors. Colonial law specified that each aisle must serve separate doorways to prevent bottlenecks. He watches as young Isaac and his mother pass smoothly, arm in arm, through the east door. Across the nave, even late gallery worshippers descend the stairs without jostling, united by a common adherence to the pattern laid out before them. In that moment, the meeting house's architecture, rows of benches, clear aisle markers, separate exits, melds with the community's discipline. The aisle capacity rule, born of past calamities, stands not as burden but as blessing, a shared covenant that faith, order, and safety walk hand in hand, guiding souls in both devout worship and daily living. Outside, the commons bustle with post-service greetings. Beneath the meeting house's shadow, Reverend Morris and Widow Parker pause to discuss the day's compliance. He thanks her for meticulous aisle checks. She smiles, noting only one minor chalk correction needed. Nearby, parishioners mingle, children darting between benches, couples exchanging farewells. Yet the clear aisles stand as silent reminders of the morning's discipline. A visitor from Boston, observing the pattern, compliments the orderly exit. Locals credit the aisle capacity rule for both reverence and safety. As the sun arcs overhead, Morris and Parker part ways, he to his study, she to prepare the next service's seating. In Colonial Massachusetts, the church aisle capacity rule left its mark beyond holy days. It taught a community that shared space, like shared faith, flourishes best when guided by measured law and mutual respect. And in every empty bench by the aisle, the promise of calm passage echoed long after the morning's prayers faded into everyday life. The sun dips low over Plymouth's quay. A bell tolls at the entrance of the salty tankard, signalling last orders before the alehouse must shutter. Colonial law mandated that all taverns close by the third curfew bell to curb nighttime revelry and ensure peaceful streets. Inside, rough-hewn oak tables bear half-empty tankards of porter and mulled cider. Patrons murmur farewells over the hearth's amber glow, aware that the door will soon lock and the final mug be poured. Martha Quinn, the alewife, moves between tables with practiced grace, collecting coins and sweeping ale rings into her apron. She recalls the magistrate's stern decree. No drink past dusk or pay the price. Rumour held that one drunken carpenter once sealed himself inside till dawn, fined triple pence and left with a pounding head. Tonight, Martha ensures every soul has settled tab and drained cups. Beyond her windows, dock workers drag crates in silent procession, while fishermen ease boats ashore under lantern guidance. Within the salty tankard, conversation softens as the final bell tolls 3 times. Martha lifts her mug in a silent toast to order, then motions to her barkeep to begin dousing hearth coals. In Colonial Massachusetts, closing at dusk represented communal safety, bolstering order without extinguishing hospitality. Outside, Deputy Constable Isaac Fry patrols the narrow lane beside the salty tankard, lantern raised. He watches as the last patrons stumble out, their voices subdued by law. The tavern's closing ordinance aimed both to protect families from rowdy drinkers and to deter clandestine gatherings in dark corners. Isaac recalls the alehouse riot of 2 years prior, when unlicensed barrels of rum sparked a midnight brawl, and the magistrates responded by reinforcing closing times with heavier fines. As Martha fastens the thick oak door with an iron bar, Isaac steps forward and examines her tavern license. pinned above the threshold. Its embossed seal confirms compliance. He nods curtly, and Martha offers him a grateful smile. The deputy's patrol ensures no door is pried open after dusk. His presence alone deters those tempted to linger. Beyond the door, the alehouse's warm glow fades, leaving the lane in shadow and order restored. Inside the Salty Tankard's back parlour, the kitchen crew extinguishes cooking fires and stacks pewter plates. Cook Agnes Porter scrubs the last stew pot, mindful that fires must be banked by curfew under the closing law. Without coals, no late-night smoke or sparks can lure lingering guests. The wood smoke aroma recedes, replaced by the faint scent of swept straw and cooled embers. Agnes recalls how her first night's job ended in shame, when kitchen fires flared past dusk, drawing constables who fined the inn and confiscated their remaining ale, an event still whispered over hearths. Determined to avoid repetition, she douses the final flame and douses her lamp oil wick. The back parlour is plunged into twilight. Only the moonlight through shuttered windows lit by iron bars hints at the room's outlines. In Colonial Massachusetts, even kitchens obeyed the alehouse closing time, ensuring that light and noise stayed within measured bounds, protecting the slumber of every household within earshot. As the night deepens, a hush settles around the Salty Tankard. In the alley, a lone fiddler named Samuel Reed packs his instrument. His spirited tunes band past dusk to comply with noise ordinances. He unbuckles the fiddle case, recalling how an earlier session in a boisterous tavern drew a constable's ire and confiscation of his bow for a fortnight. Tonight, Samuel respects the alehouse closing, his music silenced in deference to the law's guard of tranquility. He pauses under a lantern post, balancing the fiddle case and bow, and scans the heavy oak door where evening's warmth once spilled. Then, with measured steps, he continues down the lane, offering a brief, respectful nod to Isaac Fry's lantern glow. The last echo of fiddle strings is replaced by the quiet rhythm of his boots on cobblestones. Proof that at the Salty Tankard's doorstep, Martha Quinn locks away the alehouse's ledger and extinguishes the outside lantern's flame. The final curfew bell tolls, merging with the distant church steeple's chime. Inside, Matthew Clark, the blacksmith, raises a quiet mug offered earlier as a parting gift, a nod to tradesmen who favoured an ale before the walk home. He sips in respectful silence, honouring the closing rule. Martha and Matthew share a brief, wordless toast, steel-dark beer against the night's hush. Beyond the door, Plymouth streets lie cloaked in gentle shadow. In the early hours, families sleep under layered quilts. Sailors at anchor rest on creaking boards, and the promise of dawn awaits. Colonial law intended alehouse closing as a guardrail against disorder. Tonight, it stands as a testament to community self-regulation and shared respect for rest. Midday in Newburyport, townsfolk gather beneath the meeting-house portico as Magistrate Isaac Wade unrolls a parchment bearing the new tobacco ban. Pipes, snuff, and all smoking paraphernalia are forbidden within church walls and yards, even during intermissions between sermons. The edict aims to preserve sacred air and prevent ember-borne fires in wooden sanctuaries. As Wade reads the ordinance aloud, the murmur of approval ripples through the crowd. Elderly deacons nod gravely, mothers pull shawls tighter, and children gape at the idea of a church free from curling smoke. Inside the meeting house, the plastered walls and timber beams gleam in anticipation of purer breath. Toast-stained benches once marked by tobacco ashes will now serve as solemn seats for worship. In Colonial Massachusetts, this ban honored both spiritual and physical well-being, safeguarding congregants from unwanted fumes and reducing fire risk in tightly packed pews. As the final proclamation rings out, Wade seals the parchment with wax, and constables step forward to post copies at every entrance, ensuring every parishioner knows that, From this Sabbath onward, tobacco belongs outside. On Sabbath morning, Elder Martha Winslow settles onto her favorite front row pew, clutching her carved clay pipe in anticipation of the sermon's end. Yet as she lifts her hand to stoke the ember, she spots Constable Daniel Hart standing silently at the aisle's entrance, lantern held low. Under the tobacco ban, any pipe kindled inside the meeting house, no matter how discreet, risks confiscation. Martha's cheeks flush as she recalls her own grandfather's reprimand about respect for holy smoke. She tucks the pipe beneath her lapcloth, smoothing her bonnet, and lowers her eyes. The sermon begins, incense-like hymns filling the space with fragrant devotion rather than tobacco fumes. In Colonial Massachusetts, enforcement relied on gentle vigilance. Constables patrolling pews, eyes sharp for glowing pipe bowls. Martha glances at her neighbours, each with empty hands, united in breath unclouded by tobacco. The hush feels both austere and uplifting, reinforcing that worship requires untainted air. During the afternoon intermission, small clusters of men edge outside to light pipes along the meeting house's clapboard walls. Yet not all pipes escape attention. Sergeant Abigail Norris patrols the yard, quill toting in one hand, snuff box in the other, recording names of violators for magistrate's review. Under the ban, unregistered smoking incurs a fine or service in the town watch. William Thorne, a scarred blacksmith with soot-darkened fingers, offers a puff of fine Virginian tobacco before wading into the crowd of watchers. Norris steps forward, folding her arms.
Your pipe, Mr. Thorne,
she intones. He taps ashes into a tin snuffer and hands over the pipe with a rueful grin. She notes his name and offence in her ledger, then returns the dampened pipe. For this first infraction, mercy is prescribed. Outside, the air smells faintly of tobacco, mingled with pine and sea breeze. But within the law's reach, convicts learn that every ember must be stifled, every smoke held until safely beyond the meeting house grounds. Inside the women's gallery, Miss Abigail Sanford arranges small brass pipe racks at each aisle entrance, an initiative of the congregation to help enforce the ban by providing a respectful place to stow pipes before worship. Carved with simple motifs of vines and grapes, the racks stand ready as parishioners ascend narrow stairs. During the second bell's toll, Sanford greets each newcomer with a nod, guiding them to hang their pipes on numbered hooks. The gallery's hush deepens. The only sound is the gentle creak of racks as curved pipe stems settle into brass loops. Through cleverly placed vents, the scent of tobacco remains outdoors, while the gallery fills with fresh candle aromas. By colonial design, such communal adaptations eased compliance and preserved dignity. Parishioners no longer clutched smouldering pipes between sermons. Instead, they trusted the racks to guard their embers until service concluded. Sanford watches as the final parishioner secures a pipe, then ascends to her seat, cloth robe brushing wood steps. In that moment, even a humble rack becomes instrument of order, reminding all that respect for sacred space can blossom in thoughtful invention. As the evening service concludes, Reverend Samuel Halloway blesses the congregation and inclines his head toward the door. Pipes rest silently on racks. No embers glow within the meeting house walls. Parishioners file out, reclaiming their pipes before stepping into the crisp night air. Lanterns flicker along the walkway as smokers once again draw from clay stems, this time under open skies and shared camaraderie. Elder Martha Winslow retrieves her pipe, breathes in a quiet plume, and offers neighbourly nods. The tobacco ban's true success lies not in deprivation, but in balance. Unsoiled worship spaces and respectful enjoyment beyond hallowed thresholds. Reverend Halloway watches from the pulpit window as tobacco smoke dissipates into starlit skies, proof that even the humblest leaf can be tempered by law, and that communal faith may flourish in clean air and measured habit alike. As twilight deepens over the town of Wethersfield, the iron gate to the burial ground closed. By colonial ordinance, no soul, living or dead, may cross the sacred ground's boundary after the third curfew bell. Caretaker Miriam Hastings, lantern in hand, walks the perimeter path strewn with fallen maples. She pauses at the aged headstone of Reverend Cole, its inscription softened by moss, and listens for stray travellers. The law sprang from superstitious fears and practical concerns. Lingering in the graveyard after dark risked desecration, grave robbery, or mischievous pranks that cast long shadows over both the dead and the living. Miriam's wool cloak flutters in the breeze as she lifts her lantern higher to scan the wrought-iron fence. Beyond, willow limbs brush silent gravestones. The chapel's spire silhouette points to a starlit sky. The last echo of the curfew bell fades into distant rooftops. In Colonial Massachusetts, curfew laws embraced both respect for the departed and protection against midnight mischief, ensuring the burial ground remained a place of hushed remembrance, not lightless tomfoolery. On the far side of the graveyard, apprentice stonecutter Elias Thurston kneels by a half-finished headstone, carving gentle ivy motifs into cold marble. He works by the glow of a small tallow lamp set on a wooden stool. But under the boundary law, all craftsmanship must cease at curfew's final toll. With each chiseled strike, he feels the weight of unseen eyes. Locals whisper that restless spirits roam the night, drawn by late-hour shaping of their markers. As the second bell tolls, Elias pauses, brushes marble dust from his robe, and leans back to admire his work. He sketches a final flourish before packing away his tools. The lamp's flame flickers, then he lifts it in a respectful bow toward the chapel's dark silhouette. When the third bell rings, he places the lamp atop a flat stone at the edge of the pathway, an understood tribute, and retreats toward the gate. Under colonial law, even skilled artisans deferred to the burial ground's sanctity at night, ensuring both safety and solemnity in their midnight craft. At the chapel doorway, Reverend Abigail Cole ushers one last mourner through the heavy oak doors before dusk. Under the burial ground boundaries law, no funeral procession may cross the threshold after curfew, lest the deceased's rest be disturbed or safety compromised by unexpected weather or wandering animals. Tonight's brief service honors a child lost to fever. Flickering candlelight illuminates tear-streaked faces in the small congregation. Reverend Cole's soft voice leads a final prayer, emphasizing the soul's peaceful repose. Outside, Miriam Hastings stands sentinel, lantern light reflecting off her gentle face. As the third bell's final note fades, Reverend Cole closes her Bible, grants a benediction, and leads the mourners through the gate, each step measured and silent, in keeping with colonial respect for both the living's grief and the dead's tranquility. In this shared exit, the boundary law transforms into a rite of passage, guiding souls from sorrowful vigil back into the warmth of community hearths. A half-moon glows as local children dare each other to peer through the fence's bars at the burial ground's heart. Mischief or curiosity, the boundary law named even this behaviour punishable by a night in the stocks or a public admonition. Constable Gideon Pierce, lantern and staff in hand, approaches the cluster of giggling youths. His stern silhouette halts their bravado. Under the iron rails, the children freeze. Gideon lowers his lantern to their level, dispensing a gentle reprimand rather than immediate harshness. He reminds them that sacred ground demands respect, and that a respectful distance ensures both their safety and the dead's dignity. The children, eyes wide in the lantern's glow, promise to heed the law. He watches them disperse down the lane, then secures the gate one more time before continuing his rounds. In Colonial Massachusetts, even youthful curiosity bowed to the shared pact of reverence after dark. Before dawn, Miriam Hastings returns once more to the graveyard's gate to perform her final rounds. Dew glistens on headstones, nightbirds stir in the yew trees. She carries a small lantern and a sprig of rosemary, an old custom to honor the departed at daybreak. As she unlocks the gate with a soft click, she scatters rosemary leaves along the pathway, blessings for the dead and thanks for the living. With the boundary law lifted until the next dusk, she steps inside, pausing at each grave to offer a silent greeting. The crisp morning air carries echoes of the night's watch. The curfew bell's distant toll, the lantern's glow against stone, the hush that kept mischief at bay. In colonial Massachusetts, the burial ground boundary rule wove respect, safety, and remembrance into the community's daily rhythm, ensuring that each day began with honor for lives past and hope for days to come. As dusk settles on the coastal village of Marblehead, lantern light twinkles behind curtained windows, yet only one flame per household is allowed after the curfew bell tolls thrice. Town Constable Elias Barker makes his rounds, lantern swinging at his side. The law's intent: to prevent beaconing signals for smugglers, deter midnight trespassers, and preserve collective tranquility. In each cottage, families decide which room merits the solitary glow, often the kitchen, where supper is finished, or the parlor, where letters are read by lamplight. Inside Widow Thompson's home, she and her daughter Mary debate over the single brass lantern. Mary suggests the hearth, its warmth comforting, but Thompson opts for the writing desk, wishing to pen correspondence to her absent husband. As the first bell echoes, the mother dims her oil lamp and carries the brass lantern to the desk's corner. The furnace's glow fades, and shadows pool in the corners. In colonial Massachusetts, one lantern meant choice and restraint. Each flame became a silent guardian of order, guiding only essential movement until dawn. On a narrow lane off the common, the Harris family stands outside their clapboard home. 11-year-old Samuel holds the family's sole lantern permit, pinned beside the door. Under the mandate, each household must publicly display its permit, or risk extinguishment of lights by order. Neighbors peer through windows to confirm compliance. Flickers without permits invite swift fines. Mr. Harris affixes the permit below the window's wooden shutter. His wife Helen hollows her hand to shield the single lantern's glow as she lights it from the fireplace embers. Their youngest, Anna, tugs at her mother's skirt, eager to fetch water from the pump before the flame must die. As the second bell rings, Harris ushers Anna to finish chores by the hearth's faint flame inside. Outside, only one lamp will burn. In colonial Massachusetts, the one lantern rule wove accountability into every neighborhood, a visible signpost of order and mutual vigilance. Inside the lee of a row of townhouses, midwife Abigail Ryder tends her last patient by lantern light, a permitted exception for urgent care. The one lantern per house rule granted a second lantern indoors only for midwifery, medical aid, or emergencies. As her patient's labor pains ease, Abigail leans close, whispering reassurances in hushed tones. The lone lantern's glow dances across the quilted bedspread and the mother's pale face. Through the curtained window, Constable Barker pauses, peering in to verify the medical lantern's special seal, an embossed clip affixed to the handle. Seeing it, he tips his hat and steps away. Inside, Abigail extinguishes the oil lantern's chimney, then relights a smaller candle on the bedside table, another licensed allowance for the mother's postnatal care. In this moment, law and compassion merge. One household's solitary flame becomes a beacon of solace, safely contained within the walls of need. At the harbour docks, fishermen prepare nets under the lone lantern hung on the smithy's post. Seaman Jacob Pierce's family home displays the only permitted exterior light, guiding vessels safely to moor. After the curfew's third toll, every other dock lamp must darken, lest the mandate be breached. Jacob secures the fishing skiff, thumping nets into neat coils. His wife, Eliza, stands nearby, holding their child and pointing to the single lantern glowing steadily above the quay. She recalls nights when multiple lights lured ships perilously close to hidden shoals, prompting the one lantern law for maritime safety. Now, each household flame doubles as both curfew marker and maritime beacon, its measured glow a pact between land and sea. As the final bell rings, Jacob tucks nets aboard and waves to Barker, who raises his lantern in acknowledgement before moving on. The dock falls silent, save for distant lapping waves and the single protective lantern keeping watch over return voyages. At the edge of town, local blacksmith Matthew Clark finishes banking his forge's coals before night's end. Settlers required only one external lantern per house. All workshop lights must darken by the final curfew bell. Matthew lifts his apron to wipe sweat-streaked brow, then douses his lantern's wick, leaving only one dim glow at home to guide his return. He steps onto the quiet lane, lantern in hand, each step measured to avoid casting multiple shadows. The amber light illuminates his path to Widow Thompson's cottage, where he must deliver a repaired horseshoe before dawn. Along the way, he counts the darkened windows, comforted by the singular pinpoints of light, marking each household's solitary flame. As the last bell tolls, Matthew nears home, lantern swinging gently. Tomorrow, his workshop and every home will display new permits for the coming season. Tonight, though, the one-lantern law stands witness to communal calm. Each single flame, a reminder that unity shines brightest when all agree to share, restrict, and protect the night together. At the witching hour's height, midnight plus a single toll, Salem's curfew watchmen sound the wake-up call, a final legal summons alerting late sleepers to the passing of time and the need to secure doorways. Town drummer Jonas Clark and Constable Rebecca Hart stand on cobblestones beneath the church steeple. Jonas's soft drum roll echoes through empty lanes. Hart's clear call of curfew's last toll follows. In Colonial Massachusetts, this ritual ensured that even the most slumbering households stirred, bolstering safety against wandering criminals or stray livestock. Behind frosted windows, shutters rattle as families awaken, gestures exchanged in candlelit kitchens. Children blink open heavy lids. Parents touch coals in fireplaces to coax a spark. The wake-up call is neither punishment nor nuisance, but a communal service, a reminder that the night's guardian duties extend beyond silence and darkness, toward vigilance until dawn's first light. In the small kitchen warmed by dying embers, Abigail Turner rouses her ailing neighbor, Widow Clark, whose fevered slumber threatened to pass unnoticed. The wake-up call's distant drum nudges Abigail to stir her pot of cooling broth and slip across the lane with lantern in hand. She gingerly shakes the widow's shoulder, the curfew watch's proclamation, and offering a sip to rouse strength. Under colonial ordinance, the midnight summons could serve as a life-saving prompt to tend to those too ill to heed earlier bells. Through half-closed eyes, Widow Clark accepts the broth, gratitude glimmering in her feverish gaze. The watch's final tolls become more than municipal ritual. They transform into lifelines for the vulnerable in every corner of the town. At the docks, a lone watchman named Thomas Fletcher pauses his patrol to hear the final tolls. His ship's anchor rope lies slack on the deck and the crew sleeps below. Yet the wake-up call bids him ensure no vessel drifts or breaks mooring in shifting tides. He lights a small lantern, steps over coiled lines and carefully checks the anchor clasp. The midnight summons, enforced by town statute, extended maritime vigilance into sleeping hours. Fletcher's measured steps across creaking planks echo the drum's distant beat. Satisfied the ship holds fast, he returns to his lantern-guarded post, knowing every toll reaffirmed both land and sea in a pact of safety under starlit skies. In the narrow alleys of Dorchester, Thomas Harrington, once fined for nighttime drumming, now assists the watch by guiding late-returning travelers to the safety of lit doorways. As Jonas's drum signals the wake-up call, Thomas steps from shadow, lantern in hand, and steers a pair of lost merchants toward the town gate. The final bell's echo reassures travelers that help remains even after curfew. This voluntary watch duty, though unofficial, complements colonial curfew laws by extending compassion and guidance. Thomas recalls his youthful mistake under these same bells, and now repays town order with kindness. Under the wake-up call's steady beat, each rescued soul becomes testament to a law that, while strict, inspired civic care that lingered long after the final horn and drum had fallen silent. As the final echo of the wake-up call fades, townspeople settle back into their homes, reassured by the night watch's vigilance. In the town square, Jonas and Rebecca exchange weary smiles, their duties fulfilled until tomorrow's dusk. Jonas dips his drumstick in respect to the silent streets. Rebecca lowers her lantern, knowing each household now stirs safely within. The colonial curfew cycle, curfew bell, drum hour, wake-up call, formed a rhythmic symphony of order, guiding shut-ins to rest, prompting protectors to watch, and reminding all to care for one another before dawn's first light. In that harmonious cadence, Colonial Massachusetts wove law and compassion into a single thread, ensuring even the deepest night carried promise of renewal. Now that our midnight watch concludes, let your breath slow and your mind sink into calm. Picture quiet lantern-lit lanes, each single flame guiding sleepers to safety. Imagine the gentle drum's echo fading into endless hush, footsteps of watchmen growing soft in the night. In colonial Massachusetts, even darkness followed a caring rhythm. Curfew bells, drummed hours, and wake-up calls, woven into a lullaby of order and compassion. Let these images wrap around you like a wool shawl, easing tension from shoulders and cradle your thoughts. Feel the promise of dawn stir in the hush. Tomorrow's chores await, yet for now, rest, knowing you are guarded by watchful hearts under starry skies. Good night, dear listener, and may your dreams follow the same tranquil cadence.